When I made the video from yesterday discussing my future plans for the channel, I had no idea that later the very same day that I wrapped editing the video, a new Mekk-Knight would be revealed. And while the card is definitely bonkers in Orcust and World Legacy decks, giving them a 1-card Ibor Galatea, turn 1 Yazi access, and it also blocks cards like Infinite Impermanence or Lightning Storm from activating due to the token generation, these points have and will be discussed elsewhere. Having played Mekk-Knights since they were first announced, and more specifically the pure version, the last thing I expected to see in Eternity Code was a card that would support the archetype. I had thought Mekk-Knights as a whole were a pretty complete archetype, but with the reveal of Girsu, I am happy to say that I have been proven very, very wrong. So for this video, I want to focus on the pure variant of Mekk-Knights and how this card fits into their overall playstyle. And frankly, it fills so many holes in the deck that I didn't even know existed, and allows the deck to make turn 1 plays it simply could not do before. So drop a like on the video and feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. It's free, it helps the channel, and you can always unsubscribe later on if you want to. To get this discussion going, let's talk about the fact that it provides Mekk-Knights with a normal summonable monster that actually furthers the goals of the deck. Whereas previously you had to rely on cards like Avram and Rescue Rabbit to tutor him out, which, to be fair, wasn't exactly a bad combo, it wasn't exactly ideal for the deck either, as it took up 4 to 5 slots in the main deck just to make turn 1 viable for Mekk-Knights. Girsu manages to do all of this in 1 card. Not only can you use a token it generates to then summon Morningstar and get a search, but it also puts a token in a different column to open up 2 potential slots for the Mekk-Knights to be summoned into with their effects, including one for Blue Sky, which you can then get another search from. What this means is that without interruption, the deck as a whole can now set up rather easily for the opponent's turn on the first turn. Set 1, summon Girsu to that column, send a World Legacy card to the grave with its on-summon effect and it becomes a tuner, which can be useful later on for synchro plays. Use its second effect to summon the tokens, send Girsu and the token to the grave for Morningstar, pitch to search secret, and now there's 2 columns open. On the other hand, if you don't need to go into Morningstar, it also allows for an easy Avramax on your opponent's turn. Instead of summoning Morningstar, summon Lib, the World Keymaster. Set a card to your field with her effects. It's usually going to be secret, but there are other alternatives for the deck. Then, use the columns to summon fodder from your hand to use for IP. And guess what? You're set for the next turn. You'll then get to spin a card with Lib when Avramax is summoned, and if you got lucky and drew Indigo Eclipse in your opening hand, setting Secret with Lib means you get to potentially negate up to 3 monster effects on your opponent's field during their turn. And all of this comes from just summoning Girsu. Plus, using cards in hand that Mekk-Knights will almost always have access to. 1 Purple Nightfall or Blue Sky and a Girsu in hand will get you to this end board, meaning you will have another 3 cards in hand to potentially set up further negations with the spell trap lineup, or by summoning monsters to different columns in order to facilitate the effects of the spell and traps in the archetype. And that's not even mentioning the fact that it helps the deck going second immensely as well. Before this card was released, at least for the pure variant, it would take only 1 or 2 negations to stop that version of the deck in its tracks. Now obviously that will differ if you're playing the invoked variation of the deck or a different variation, but just talking about the pure version of the deck, it wasn't hard to stop the deck in its tracks. With Girsu, however, it can serve to bait out any negation straight away, especially given the reputation it will have from its place in Orcust decks, which will then allow the deck to continue on with the plays that it would have made anyway before the card was released. Not to mention, if the effect is negated but the card still stays on board, there's plenty of link monsters that will serve to use it as material later on in the duel. However, it is worth noting that since it is a level 4 Mekk-Knight, it can't be revived nor boosted by the 2 trap cards the deck runs. While this is only something small to note, especially considering it really isn't likely to stay on the field for long, it is still worth bearing in mind when you come to make your plays throughout the duel. But now, let's talk about the fact that it can become a goddamn tuner. A tuner in Mekk-Knights. This opens up so many plays the deck simply didn't have access to before, specifically synchros of level 8 and upwards. I am including level 8 on this list since it can be synchroed with another copy of itself that hasn't used that effect. And given cards like Monster Reborn and World Legacy Succession exist and are run in this deck, there are plenty of ways to get 2 of them out, even though it can't be revived with Secret. So, what monsters are viable to run for Mekk-Knights? Well, powerful level 8 synchros suddenly become somewhat of a staple in the extra deck in my mind. Borreload Savage Dragon can be easily summoned and gets 2 counters either from Morningstar or Lib, or even potentially 4 counters from Avramax, but the 2 former ones will both push Savage Dragon up to 4000 attack on top of having its 2 negations. Other level 8 synchros such as Psyframe Lord Omega are universally useful, and even cards like Scrap Dragon can now find a place in the deck, given that there will be times when you will have some of the continuous spells and traps clogging your back row. Even Dragon Ogre Deity of Tenyi can find a place in this deck, providing a different form of interruption while giving a massive beta for the deck to use overall to push for an OTK. As for the higher levels, there are options that can be run, such as the Time Lord Synchro and the old classic in Leo, but I do not believe these are worth running, especially considering it means running either Green Horizon or Orange Sunset, neither of which I can particularly recommend, with Green Horizon being a tentative one of at best. But to finish this video, it is also worth discussing the elephant in the room, which is the power of the card itself, especially in Orcust decks, and discussing how it may find its way to the ban list in the future. The card itself is insanely strong. There's no getting around it. This card is incredibly strong. An archetypal Armageddon Knight that gives one of the strongest current decks 1 card access to some of its best plays. I cannot help but imagine that this card will find its way onto the ban list at some point, simply because I think it is just too strong a card to be left alone. Either that, or they're going to have to gut Orcust even further than they already have, which I don't really see them doing aside pushing some cards to 1. What this means for the pure version of Mekk-Knights is the ability to use such a powerful card for the archetype might be rather short-lived. Whether it goes to 2 or 1 or is even banned is just something I can't guess, but it is worth bearing in mind when running the card, which should absolutely be run at 3 by the way, because there is really no reason to not do that. It's just worth bearing in mind that its time in the game is likely not going to be that long of a stay. And those are my thoughts on Girsu. If there's anything about the card you think I missed in relation to the pure variant of Mekk-Knights, or if there's anything you'd like to discuss in general about the card, then please feel free to in the comments. I'm always keen to engage in a discussion with you all down below. I'm also now streaming on Twitch, where you'll find a lot of my gaming content from here on out. If that interests you, then click the link in the description below and drop a follow on the channel. I'm planning to stream around 3 times a week, but it'll depend on how my schedule goes, and that is likely to change in the coming months as I get into uni. But it is a good way to come chill, say hi, hang out, and just have a good time in general. Don't forget to love each other, folks, and I shall see you all in the next video.